My girlfriend tricked me into raising another man's child, so I made sure she lost everything. Have you ever looked back at a moment in your life and realized everything you believed in was a complete lie? Yeah, that's exactly where I found myself, standing in my own home, feeling like the biggest idiot on the planet. I am 32M, and for the past 5 years, I thought I was living the dream. I had a beautiful girlfriend, Ashley 29F, a woman I adored with every part of me. We had a son, Lucas, who was my entire world. I had the family I always wanted, the one I never had growing up. I didn't come from the best background. My parents split when I was a kid, and my dad wasn't exactly the affectionate type. He was the kind of man who believed love was something you showed by putting food on the table and a roof over someone's head. Not with words, not with affection, and certainly not with I love yous. My mom tried her best, but she was too busy working double shifts to do much else. So, when I became a father, I swore to myself that I would never let my kid feel like he was just an obligation. I was going to be the dad I wished I had growing up, the one who was present, the one who gave unconditional love, the one who showed up for every scraped knee, every bedtime story, every little league game. So when Ashley told me she was pregnant, I didn't hesitate for a second. I was all in. At the time, Ashley and I had been together for 2 years. She was gorgeous, the kind of beautiful that turned heads when we walked into a room. But she wasn't just that. She was charming, funny, and had this way of making life feel exciting. I used to joke that she could talk a priest into committing a crime if she really wanted to. She was just that convincing. I was just an average guy. I worked hard, had a stable job in IT, and lived a pretty simple life before her. Ashley, on the other hand, had this fire. She made even the most mundane things feel fun. I fell for her hard. I remember the day she told me she was pregnant like it was yesterday. We were sitting on our tiny apartment couch, me with my laptop open, trying to fix some bug in a program I was writing, and her fidgeting with the hem of her hoodie. She had this nervous energy, the kind she got when she wasn't sure how I'd react to something. "I have something to tell you," she had said, "but you have to promise you won't freak out." "Okay." I closed my laptop, giving her my full attention. She took a deep breath, then blurted out, "I'm pregnant." It was like the world froze for a second. Pregnant. For a moment, I just stared at her, waiting for the panic to hit me. But it never came. Instead, a slow smile spread across my face, and I reached for her hand. "Are you serious?" She nodded, her eyes searching mine. "Yeah." I laughed. Actually laughed because for the first time in my life, something felt completely right. I told her, "This is amazing, I'm going to be a dad." That was the moment I made a silent promise. I would love this kid with everything I had. And I did. The day Lucas was born was hands down the best day of my life. The moment the nurse placed him in my arms, everything else in the world disappeared. He was so tiny, his little face scrunched up like he was already judging the world around him. "I'm your dad," I whispered to him. "I'm going to take care of you. Always." I meant every word. For the next 4 years, I poured everything into raising him. I was there for every milestone, his first steps, his first words, his first birthday, where he smashed cake all over his face. When he had nightmares, I was the one who sat by his bed, rubbing his tiny back until he fell asleep again. I spent my evenings building blanket forts with him and my weekends taking him to the park, lifting him onto my shoulders so he could see the world from a little higher up. I signed the birth certificate without hesitation because, in my heart, there was no doubt. He was mine. And Ashley? She seemed happy, too. Sure, there were moments when she seemed distant, times when she'd brush off my affection, times when she'd snap at me over small things, but I always chalked it up to stress. Parenting wasn't easy, and I figured maybe she just needed space. I never once doubted her. Not until the day I found that letter. That was the day everything fell apart. Life had a way of throwing punches when you least expected them. Some hits you saw coming, the kind you could brace for, the kind you could recover from. And then there were the ones that came out of nowhere, hitting you so hard that you weren't sure if you'd ever get back up. That's what this was. A sucker punch straight to the gut. It started like any other day. It was a Saturday afternoon, and Ashley had taken Lucas to a birthday party. I was home alone, trying to be productive. We had a small shared closet in our bedroom. Just a cramped space where we kept extra clothes, storage bins, and a few forgotten belongings shoved into the back corners. I was digging through it, looking for an old laptop I'd meant to sell when I saw the envelope. It was wedged between some shoe boxes, half crumpled like someone had shoved it there in a hurry. I almost ignored it, thinking it was just an old bill or a misplaced piece of junk mail, but something about it caught my attention. Maybe it was the official-looking seal on the top. Maybe it was the fact that it was addressed to Ashley, but I had never seen it before. I pulled it out, smoothing out the creases, and that's when I saw it. A letter from family court. The words blurred together for a second as my brain tried to catch up with what I was reading. I scanned through the lines quickly, my eyes catching on certain phrases: visitation request, biological father, paternity claim. Then I saw the name. Jake. I had heard of him once. Maybe twice. Ashley had mentioned an ex-boyfriend from before we got together, but it was never anything more than a passing remark. Just a name from a past life. Someone that had no place in our story. Except, apparently, he did. He was petitioning for visitation rights. He claimed to be Lucas's real father, and Ashley had known for 6 months. 6 months. I don't remember sitting down, but suddenly I was on the edge of the bed. My chest felt tight, like the air had been sucked out of the room. It didn't make sense. It couldn't make sense. I had been there, every moment, every milestone. There was no way this was true. But the doubt had already crept in, whispering its poison into my mind. I needed answers. Now, Ashley and Lucas got home a couple of hours later. I barely registered the sound of Lucas's little feet running down the hallway as he ran to his room, his laughter echoing through the house. Ashley walked in a few moments later, tossing her purse onto the kitchen counter like it was just another normal day. But nothing was normal anymore. I confronted her the second she turned around. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I just held up the letter, the paper shaking in my hands, and asked her to explain. She froze. I saw it instantly. That flicker of oh shit in her eyes before she forced her face into something that resembled calm. But I wasn't stupid. I knew her. I knew when she was hiding something. At first, she tried to downplay it. She said it was nothing, that Jake was just being dramatic, that I had nothing to worry about. But I wasn't having it. The more I pressed, the more cracks started to show. Her voice wavered, her breathing picked up, and then, just like that, the floodgates opened. She confessed everything. She had cheated on me early in our relationship. It wasn't just a one-time mistake either. It had been months of sneaking around behind my back. She had gotten pregnant, and she knew there was a chance the baby wasn't mine. But when she found out, she made a choice. She chose me. She picked me to be the father because I had a stable job, because I was responsible, because I wasn't like Jake. She figured I would be a better provider, that I would give Lucas the life he deserved. She had used me. Every late night feeding, every scraped knee, every moment I had poured into being a father, none of it had been real. I had been nothing but a safety net, a backup plan. I didn't realize I was shaking until I saw my own hands. My whole body felt hot, but at the same time, there was this chilling numbness creeping into my chest, settling in deep. I asked her if she had ever planned on telling me. She shrugged, like it was just some casual thing, like she hadn't completely shattered my world. She said that she saw no reason to bring it up because, in her mind, it didn't matter. She told me that biology wasn't everything, that I had raised Lucas, that I was his father in every way that mattered. She actually had the audacity to look offended when I didn't immediately agree with her. She told me I was being selfish. Selfish. Like I was the bad guy for being devastated. Like I was somehow the villain for not just accepting the fact that my entire life had been a lie. I didn't even recognize the woman standing in front of me anymore. The Ashley I had fallen in love with, the mother of my child, she was gone. In her place was someone else entirely. Someone who didn't even flinch at what she had done. And the worst part? Lucas. I loved that boy more than anything in the world. He was my son. And now, I didn't even know where I stood. Did I still have a right to call myself his father? Would he ever even know the truth? I didn't have those answers. I didn't know anything anymore. All I knew was that my world had just come crashing down, and there was no putting it back together the way it was before. I wish I could say Ashley broke down in guilt and begged for my forgiveness. I wish I could say she realized the gravity of what she had done, that she showed even an ounce of regret for turning my life into a complete lie. But that's not what happened. Instead, she acted like I was the one being unreasonable. After she admitted to everything, I sat there in stunned silence, my heart still racing from the bomb she had just dropped on me. I could hear the faint sound of Lucas playing in his room down the hall, completely unaware of the chaos happening just a few feet away. Ashley was calm. Too calm. She told me she didn't understand why I was making such a big deal out of it. She had the nerve to tell me that Lucas was mine in every way that mattered, that I had raised him, loved him, been there for him, and that should be enough. That it was selfish of me to act like biology was the only thing that made a father. I could barely process what she was saying. I had given my entire life to this kid. I had poured every ounce of love I had into being the best dad I could be. I had stayed up at night when he was sick, worked extra hours to make sure we could afford everything he needed, spent weekends building train sets on the living room floor, teaching him how to ride a bike, making him laugh when he was scared of the dark. And now she wanted to tell me I was selfish for being upset that I had been lied to? I asked her again if she had ever planned on telling me the truth. She rolled her eyes. She told me she didn't see the point. In her mind, it didn't matter who Lucas's biological father was because I was the one who had stepped up. She acted like she had done me some favor by choosing me instead of Jake. Like I should be grateful that she picked me to be the father instead of telling me the truth. That was when something inside me snapped. I had spent years believing I had a real family. I had spent years thinking Ashley loved me, that we were partners in this, that we were building a life together. But in reality, I was just a convenient option, a backup plan, a paycheck. I told her that she had stolen my right to make my own choice, that she had robbed me of the truth and tricked me into living a lie. She shrugged. She told me I was overreacting, that we had been happy, that nothing had really changed. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break something. I wanted to shake her and make her see what she had done to me. But she didn't care. She told me that if I really loved Lucas, I wouldn't let something as stupid as biology ruin our family. That I should just get over it. Like it was nothing. Like it wasn't the biggest betrayal I had ever experienced. I asked her if Jake knew, if she had ever told him. She hesitated, just for a second. Then she told me that she had cut him off when she got pregnant. She knew he wouldn't step up. She knew he wouldn't be a good father. So she decided I would be better. She chose me. Like I was just some piece on a chessboard she could move around however she wanted. I asked her if she had ever loved me, if any of it had ever been real. She sighed, like I was exhausting her. Then she told me that she cared about me, that she appreciated me, that I had been a good partner and a great dad. But love? She didn't even answer that part. That was all I needed to hear. I felt something inside me go cold. I wasn't a person to her. I wasn't her partner. I wasn't Lucas's dad. I was just a convenience. I stood up, my head spinning, my stomach churning. My entire life had just shattered around me. And she was standing there, acting like I was being unreasonable for feeling anything about it. I told her I needed time, that I needed space, that I couldn't even look at her right now. She crossed her arms and told me I was being ridiculous, that I was about to ruin our family over something that didn't even matter. I didn't even have the energy to argue with her anymore. I grabbed my keys and walked out the door. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't even care. All I knew was that I couldn't be there. Not in that house. Not with her. Not with the weight of the truth crushing down on me like 1,000 bricks. I got in my car, my hands shaking as I gripped the steering wheel. I stared out at the road, but everything felt like a blur. For years of loving a son who wasn't mine. For years of building a life that had been based on a lie. And now, I had no idea what the hell I was supposed to do next. I drove aimlessly for what felt like hours. My mind raced through every moment of the past 4 years, replaying them like some kind of sick movie I had been tricked into starring in. Every single memory, every time Lucas called me dad. A lie, a manipulation. The betrayal burned in my chest like acid. But beneath that, beneath the overwhelming grief of losing the life I thought I had, something darker began to take root. Rage. Ashley had stolen something from me. Not just my role as a father, but my right to choose my own path. She had decided, on her own, that I was the better option. She had used me, lied to me, and now had the audacity to act like I was the one being unreasonable. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. I parked in an empty lot, resting my forehead against the steering wheel as I forced myself to breathe. I had to be smart about this. I couldn't just storm back into that house and start screaming. I needed a plan. I needed justice. I reached for my phone and did what I had never thought I would need to do. I searched for a family lawyer. The next day, I met with one. I sat across from a man who had seen cases like mine before. A man who didn't flinch when I told him that my girlfriend had committed paternity fraud and knowingly deceived me for years. He listened carefully, nodding along, then leaned back in his chair and let out a deep sigh. "She knew the child wasn't yours," he said, tapping his pen against the desk. "She knowingly allowed you to sign the birth certificate, take on financial responsibility, and raise him under false pretenses. That is fraud." The words hit me like a freight train. That wasn't just betrayal. That was illegal. I felt a new sense of control settle over me. If Ashley thought she could just shrug this off, if she thought there would be no consequences, she was in for a rude awakening. I asked the lawyer what my options were. He told me I could sue Ashley for paternity fraud, emotional distress, and financial damages. That meant every cent I'd spent on Lucas, every medical bill, every daycare fee, every toy, diaper, and meal could be demanded back. I almost laughed at the idea, not because I found it funny, but because it felt so insane to be sitting there discussing legal action against the woman I once thought I would marry, the woman I had loved. But love had nothing to do with this anymore. This was about revenge. I gathered every piece of evidence I could. I dug through my phone, scrolling through old messages, finding the ones where Ashley had assured me, again and again, that Lucas was mine. I found photos of us in the hospital, my signature on the birth certificate, proof that I had been the one paying for everything since day one. I even found messages from her to a friend, joking about how lucky she was that she had picked the right guy, because I was stable and responsible. The knife twisted deeper. I handed everything over to my lawyer. We filed a lawsuit. At first, Ashley didn't take it seriously. She laughed when I told her what I had done, rolling her eyes and calling me petty. She told me no judge would ever rule in my favor, that I had raised Lucas, that I had signed the papers, that no court would care about hurt feelings. But it wasn't about feelings. It was about fraud. And the moment she got the official court summons, the smugness disappeared. She panicked. She blew up my phone, leaving me frantic voicemails, begging me to be reasonable. She swore she had never meant to hurt me. She cried, told me she was sorry, told me she never wanted things to end up like this. I ignored every single message. I wasn't playing her game anymore. She wasn't sorry for what she had done. She was only sorry she got caught. Now, she was going to face the consequences. The day we walked into the courthouse, Ashley was still convinced she could win. She had that same smug expression she always wore when she thought she had the upper hand. Her shoulders were squared, her chin lifted, and she barely spared me a glance as she strutted into the courtroom, her lawyer trailing behind her. It was the look of someone who had spent her entire life believing she could manipulate her way out of anything. But today was different, because I wasn't the same fool who had blindly trusted her for years. I wasn't the man who thought love was enough to overlook betrayal. I was here for one reason, to make sure she faced the consequences of what she had done to me. I took my seat at the plaintiff's table while my lawyer organized our case files. He was a sharp, no-nonsense guy who had handled more than a few paternity fraud cases. When we first met, he had assured me that I had a strong case, but now, seeing him so meticulously prepared gave me even more confidence. Ashley's lawyer was a different story. The man looked like he had been handed this case last minute and was hoping to bluff his way through it. I doubted he had even read through all the evidence we had. The judge entered, and as soon as we were sworn in, my lawyer wasted no time getting straight to the facts. He started with the most damning piece of evidence, the DNA test results. The moment those results were presented, I felt the energy in the courtroom shift. Ashley's confidence wavered, and for the first time, I saw it panic. I had expected her to deny everything, maybe try to play the victim. But instead, she sat there stiffly, her nails digging into her palms as the judge read through the report. The words cut through the air like a blade. I was not Lucas's biological father. For years, I had given my heart, my time, my money, and my future to a child I had believed was mine. And now, in front of the entire court, the truth was laid bare. But that was just the beginning. My lawyer moved on to the next phase of our argument, the financial records. Every single expense was documented. Every hospital bill, every pediatrician visit, every daycare payment. We had it all. My lawyer methodically laid it out, one by one, showing just how much Ashley had stolen from me under false pretenses. Her lawyer tried to push back, arguing that I had voluntarily taken on those responsibilities, that by signing the birth certificate, I had legally accepted my role as Lucas's father, regardless of biology. But my lawyer wasn't having it. He pointed to the text messages we had pulled, the ones where Ashley admitted, in her own words, that she had known Lucas wasn't mine and had purposely kept it from me. He read them aloud, his voice steady, every word slamming into Ashley like a hammer. I know there's a chance he's Jake's, but Jake is a loser. It doesn't really matter, does it? Telling him would just ruin everything. Why would I do that? Each message was another nail in the coffin. Ashley's lawyer tried to argue that those texts were taken out of context, but the judge wasn't buying it. I could see it in his face, disgust. He was looking at Ashley like she was lower than dirt. And then, as if things couldn't get worse for her, my lawyer pulled out the final piece of evidence. A message from Ashley to one of her friends, sent shortly after she found out she was pregnant. He'll be a great dad and take care of everything. Jake would just bail. There it was. Cold. Calculated. Premeditated fraud. The courtroom was silent. Ashley's face had drained of all color. Her mouth was slightly open, but she had no words. She had been so confident walking in here, so sure that she could manipulate her way out of this. But now she was backed into a corner with nowhere to run. Her lawyer stammered out some weak argument about how emotions were high, how relationships were complicated, but it didn't matter. The judge had heard enough. When the judge finally spoke, his voice was ice cold. He declared that Ashley had knowingly committed paternity fraud, that she had deceived me for years, causing emotional and financial damage, that she had taken advantage of me in the most unforgivable way possible. And then he ruled in my favor. Ashley was ordered to repay every single cent I'd spent on Lucas, over $50,000. Ashley let out a choked gasp, finally snapping out of her stunned silence. She turned to her lawyer, whispering frantically, her hands shaking. She couldn't believe it. The judge wasn't done. He reminded her that fraud was a serious crime, that if she refused to pay, I could pursue criminal charges against her. Ashley's entire body slumped forward. She knew there was no getting out of this. I sat there, watching as the realization fully hit her, watching as her world crumbled right in front of her. Ashley's life collapsed after that ruling. She didn't have the money, not even close. I don't think it had ever occurred to her that she might actually have to pay for what she had done. I think she had convinced herself that the judge would let her off with a slap on the wrist, that she would walk away with nothing more than a bruised ego. That was a devastating amount for someone like her. I later found out she had less than $10,000 in savings. She had been living comfortably, relying on me for the majority of our household expenses while she spent freely on things she wanted. Expensive nights out with her friends, luxury beauty products, designer bags and clothes. None of it mattered anymore, because now she had to sell everything. The first thing to go was her car, a sleek little Audi that she had loved more than anything. She sold it for far less than it was worth, just to get some quick cash to put toward what she owed me. It barely made a dent. Then came the jewelry, some of the gifts for me over the years. A diamond bracelet I had given her for our anniversary, sold. A gold necklace I had picked out for her birthday, gone. Even her engagement ring, the one she had kept after claiming she wasn't ready to get married yet, was pawned off. Reality hit her harder with each passing day. She had to move out of our apartment, the apartment I had been paying most of the rent for, and move back in with her parents. Her parents were mortified when they found out what she had done. Her mother, who had always been polite to me, refused to even look at her for weeks. Her father, a strict and prideful man, practically disowned her. He refused to help her financially, telling her that she had brought this on herself. Her friends abandoned her, too. Once the truth spread through our social circles, she became a pariah. People she had known for years, women she had gossiped with, partied with, taken weekend trips with, started cutting her off, one by one. No one wanted to be associated with the woman who had lied about her child's father just to secure financial stability. A few months passed before I heard from her again. I had fully moved on with my life. I was thriving, working hard, refocusing on myself, spending time with people who actually valued me. Then, one evening, my phone buzzed with a message. I almost didn't recognize the number at first. I had deleted hers after the lawsuit was finalized, but something told me to check it anyway. It was Ashley. The message was long, a desperate, rambling plea for mercy. She told me she had nothing left, that she had tried everything to pay off what she owed, but it wasn't enough, that her life had turned into a nightmare. She begged me to meet with her just once. She said she missed me, that she still loved me, that she had made a mistake. And then, the part that made me feel like I was reading script. Lucas needs you. He still loves you. You were always his real father. I stared at the message for a long time. She didn't love me. She didn't care about what she had done to me. She just wanted out. She thought she could manipulate me one last time. And Lucas? As much as I loved that kid, I knew I had to walk away. Loving him had never been the lie, but everything else was. She wasn't reaching out for his sake. She was using him as a weapon, hoping the emotional pull would reel me back in. I didn't respond. I never responded. Because the man she had betrayed, the man who had once been weak enough to let her lies control him, he didn't exist anymore. Ashley had made her choice, and now she was completely alone.